This is Floor and Ceiling, and today we're diving into some of the best returning bigs in the 2026 NBA Draft. Let's break it down.
Jayden Quaintance is the best big, period, in this class. It just so happens that he's also pretty young, having only turned 18 in July. That means that Quaintance was 17 when he was dominating on defense as a freshman at Arizona State. Quaintance would have probably been a top 5 pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, but he wasn't eligible yet. Now, after transferring to Kentucky, JQ is looking to build on a great first college season. In my eyes, he has everything that it takes to do that. Quaintance is a stock machine who moves his feet on the perimeter, defends with strength and toughness, he protects the rim, and he shuts down entire plays all by himself. Looking towards his sophomore campaign now, there are two main things that I want to see from Quaintance. The first is a more fleshed out offensive repertoire. JQ averaged about 9 points on 53.6% true shooting, while only making 48% of his free throws and having an assist-to-turnover ratio of less than 1. All of that is very improvable. Basically, my question is whether the Kentucky big is going to be almost exclusively a play finisher, or if he'll also face up, attack from the perimeter, and really just be able to create his own offense. Then, it's also important to monitor how Quaintance comes back from a torn ACL. He had knee surgery in April and was projected to be cleared for contact this month. I think that Quaintance will bounce back just fine in the long term, but a slow start or further injury problems could impact his draft stock. Pat Ngongba was considered a top 5 center in his high school class, but foot issues really hampered his last few years. Ngongba originally injured his foot in July of 2023. Then he missed all of his senior season of high school, he didn't debut with Duke until November of last year, and now, just earlier this summer, Ngongba was spotted in a walking boot again. Still, there's so much to like about the Duke big that he's solidly in my preseason top 30 despite a somewhat precarious future. After all, it's never ideal to invest too much in bigs with foot issues, but I firmly believe that Ngongba can make that investment worth it if he fulfills his promise as a big that can finish plays, put the ball on the floor from the perimeter, and move his feet as a defender. As a scorer, the lowest hanging fruit for Ngongba is finishing after rolling or while playing in the dunker spot. He can also score after an offensive rebound. Ngongba was great on the boards last season, but I also like him because of his flashes driving and facing up. Then, again, getting closer to the paint, Ngongba can hold his own in the post as a scorer and as a defender. The 19-year-old gets to his spots thanks to his strength, and Ngongba pushes opposing bigs away from the paint with his thick, functional frame. The biggest thing really is staying healthy because, like I said, I think that Ngongba will live up to his initial promise, at least to some extent, as long as he's on the floor. Henri Veesaar transferred from Arizona to UNC, and he's looking to build on a fruitful third college season. The former Real Madrid big has my attention because he dunks, shoots threes, and blocks shots. Veesaar finished 73% of his shots at the rim last season, and that included 55 dunks. He also made 33% of his threes, on low volume, sure, but showing enough upside to draw some attention spotting up, trailing, or sometimes popping as well. Down the other end, I'm not super high on Veesaar as a defender, but his pop and his size can make him a decently, relatively impactful rim protector. In the NBA, the Estonian big is probably only a drop big, but that's okay in the right role. Thinking about this year at UNC, I think that Veesaar should be paired with Caleb Wilson for an exciting and versatile front court on both sides of the ball, but I want to stress that Veesaar is not a surefire finished product. The new Tar Heel center is going to be 22 by the time the 2026 draft takes place. He needs to show even more this season. Last year was a good start, but it's a fresh start now. I think that Veesaar is going to keep finishing plays at a high rate, but other than that, I find him a bit limited. I'm not high on his passing, even though it's fine statistically, and I think that Veesaar needs to be tougher and just flat out more dominant as a rebounder, particularly on the defensive glass. For now, I have the new UNC big as a top 45-ish prospect. I first covered Aday 2 years ago when he committed to UCLA. The Spanish big was once seen as a potential lottery pick before arriving to the US, although I was never as high on him. I always thought that Mata had a ways to go physically and that his skill set was definitely intriguing, but nonetheless very theoretical, with high turnovers, questionable toughness, and a very inconsistent motor. Mata pretty much removed himself from draft conversations following his freshman season, but to be honest, I thought that he bounced back in his sophomore year. Mata looked much more up to speed from a body and discipline standpoint. Frankly, I thought Mick Cronin was very harsh on him and he deserved more run, especially since none of UCLA's other options at the 5 were playing better. Anyway, the 20-year-old center is at Michigan now. I want to see Mata do what he did in his last few months with UCLA, but now that he's a Wolverine, with much greater regularity. I think Mata can add value as a rim protector, front court passer, and play finisher in that order. Aday is probably always going to be limited if he makes it to the NBA, but his feel and production is worth digging into. A top 60 spot in preseason makes sense to me. Mata's best minutes only came in short spurts last season, and he still has a lot to show. Jojo Tugler is the best defensive big on my returning centers list, other than Jayden Quaintance. The first thing you'll probably notice about the Houston prospect is his absurd length. Tugler is about 6'8", but his wingspan is gigantic at about 7'6". That's ridiculous, and Tugler combines every bit of that range with awesome bounce and mobility. The Cougars prospect zips around the floor, he checks multiple positions, and he snuffs out shots and plays. Tugler's 12.4 block percentage last season, I think, speaks for itself. When I first learned about Tugler right before his freshman year, my questions were about his very limited offense. Basically, I just felt like the Houston big was limited to catching and dunking. Anything else outside of that fell outside of Tugler's comfort zone, but now, after a couple of seasons, I think that Tugler has gotten to a point where he's fine as a low volume play finisher with a bit of a short mid-range game as well. The caveat here is that all of this is in college. Even as a sophomore, Tugler averaged 5.5 points in 22 minutes a night. So once he hits the NBA, there's still an additional curve as far as that's concerned. Still, I think it's fine to project Tugler as a backup, maybe even specialist type center who doesn't necessarily need to start or finish games at the next level to add value. This year in college, I'll be checking to see if Tugler has fleshed out his offense in any way, and then whether he can play more minutes. Flory Bidunga's NBA role reminds me of a Dembona. Bidunga is a pure 5 who's undersized at 6'9", but he makes up for it with his long arms and powerful pop. At this point, the Kansas center is strictly a play finisher. I don't feel comfortable projecting Bidunga to do anything else, even though he did show off some passing chops in high school. As a freshman, Flory was a threat at the basket with his dunking, rebounding, and shot blocking. Bidunga had 48 dunks in 34 games while playing around 16 minutes a night. Then, he was also very safe on the boards, and this held true on both ends. Plus, the 20-year-old also showed flashes as a rim protector. However, these were scarce. Bidunga also fouled way too much. That's going to be a challenge this season, as he'll need to defend much more under control in order to stay on the floor for longer stretches as a sophomore. On top of that, it's also just that Bidunga is very limited right now. He's a plug-and-play big above the rim threat on both ends, but he hasn't shown that he can do anything other than finish plays on very low usage. Plus, that 53% from the free throw line also really needs to improve. Zuby Ejiofor has the best motor of any big on this list. The St. John's forward is guaranteed to outwork anyone. For me, Zuby's outlier skill is very clearly his rebounding. Sure, he's undersized and his body is really more of a 4 than a 5's. Ejiofor's skill set is that of a center, but honestly, everything that he does on the floor offsets those limitations, at least until now. When he's on the glass, Ejiofor does everything in his power to track and pursue the ball. He'll dive on the floor, take others out, make multiple efforts, but one way or another, he'll create an extra possession for his team. Ejiofor averaged a little more than 8 rebounds per game last season, with 4.4 of those coming on the offensive glass. I expect that the broad strokes of Ejiofor's style of play won't change much throughout his career, but looking ahead towards his 4th season in college, I am wondering whether Zuby will be able to put the ball on the floor a little bit more. He's had some very scarce flashes, but nothing that I truly believe in just yet. Going from his sophomore to his junior season, Ejiofor more than tripled his scoring output. He averaged almost 15 points a game for St. John's, but I'm just not sure that Zuby's hard-nosed scoring is super translatable to the NBA right now. Still, if the draft was tomorrow though, I would have Ejiofor as a priority for a 2-way contract. I think Bangot Dak is a potential first rounder, but he was only cleared for basketball activities 3 days ago, so I want to see how he looks to start the year. Last season though, Dak showed super appealing glimpses on just about a nightly basis. Immediately, the Colorado prospect's ground coverage stands out. Dak's tape and numbers prove that he's rangy with a steady motor, reliable timing, and functional pop. The 20-year-old had an 8-block game in January, for instance, to give you an idea of how impactful he can be as a defender. It's not just blocking shots though. Dak can also switch onto ball handlers on the perimeter and get stops in space. Ahead of his junior season, what I want is for Dak to find a more defined role on offense. His half-court scoring isn't good enough right now, and his playmaking is virtually non-existent. At this juncture, I see Dak as a play finisher with blocks, dunks, and sometimes threes, but like I said, he needs more consistency across the board. For now, Dak's scoring should come with dunks or in transition. Maybe he'll make some spot-up threes as well, but Dak only made about 53% of his layups. He only cashed in on 24% of his catch and shoot threes, and his assist to turnover ratio was 0.8, which just about cuts it, but it doesn't stand out in any way. As a whole, I am pretty in on Dak, but I need him to take a step forward on offense. If you look back at my first mock last year, I actually had MOTIEJUS KRIVAS as a top 15 pick. In hindsight, that was too high. He should have just been a first rounder, but I'm still into the 7'2" center 1 year later. Frankly, the Lithuanian prospect had a pretty strange sophomore season. KRIVAS played with his country at the under-20 Eurobasket where he stood out, but then the college year started. He only played 8 games for Arizona, starting just 1 against Duke, and then in December, KRIVAS got shut down for the season with a foot injury. Basically, as the 2026 draft cycle gets started, he has a totally clean slate. Originally, I liked KRIVAS because he's huge, rebounds well, and shows skill scoring in the post and as a roller as well. KRIVAS' numbers at the rim on both ends need to improve. By that, I mean he doesn't block enough shots, and then as a scorer, his percentages near the basket should be higher. In totality, KRIVAS has played so little over the last year, and honestly just in college overall, that his current level is somewhat tough to gauge. This season, Arizona is going to have plenty of eyes on them for Koa Pete, Braden Burries, C.D. Gay, and a few others, so let's just wait and see if KRIVAS can recapture whatever made me interested in him in the first place. Moustapha Thiam transferred from UCF to Cincinnati. He deserves a mention in this video, but he remains a pretty big project, no pun intended. I'll start with some of the red flags that I see with Thiam, and this isn't to rag on him, it's to explain the reasoning behind my evaluation. Physically, Thiam is evidently tall and long, but he has a fairly narrow base and shoulders. In turn, that makes it tough for him to stay on balance when he plays with or through contact. You can see this in Thiam's 55.7 true shooting percentage, or you can also see it with his defensive rebounding, which is far too low. All of this is combined with virtually no facilitating, and Thiam doesn't get to the free throw line either. So the former UCF big statistical profile, when combined with his tape, is a little tough to digest. Still, we shouldn't write off the Senegal big. I've been tracking Thiam since before he made it to college. His appeal has generally remained the same. If everything clicks, Thiam will block shots, finish dunks at the rim, and shoot threes. As a freshman, he had a 9.1 block percentage, he made 66% of his shots at the basket, and he converted 29% of his threes. There's something there, but it needs to be brought out. Thiam is more of a 2027 big for me. He's a cool prospect though, and I would keep watching him pretty closely. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Make sure to leave a comment telling me who you think the best returning bigs in the 2026 NBA draft are. Make sure to subscribe to the Floor and Ceiling Substack. The link is in the description. And if you want to watch more content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. Take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.